Voice-over script, a major courtroom development involving Donald Trump, is drawing serious legal attention today. This is not a final verdict. However, the judge's latest ruling could significantly influence how this case moves forward. In this video, we will clearly explain what the ruling is. We will look at the legal background behind it, and we will break down what legal experts believe this could mean in the days ahead. To understand why this ruling matters, we first need to look at the type of case involved. This case is not about a criminal verdict. It is a legal matter that focuses on civil and procedural issues. That distinction is important because civil cases follow a very different legal process. According to public court records, this case involves complex legal questions rather than a single dramatic moment. Based on filings available at the time of recording, the focus is on how the law is applied, not on personal allegations. This case matters for several reasons. The defendant is a former president of the United States. That alone places the case under intense public and media scrutiny. It also raises legal questions that could influence how similar cases are handled in the future. And because of the public profile involved, there is widespread interest in every courtroom development involving Donald Trump. Now, let us look at what actually happened inside the courtroom. Despite dramatic headlines, this ruling was not a final decision. It was a procedural move made by the judge during the legal process. The judge reviewed arguments from both sides and made specific choices. Some requests were approved, allowing certain parts of the case to move forward. Other requests were rejected, meaning those arguments will not be considered in the same way. The judge also placed limits on how some issues can be argued going forward. This type of ruling is common in complex legal cases. Judges issue decisions like this to control the scope of a case. They do this to keep proceedings focused and legally sound. Online, these rulings are often misunderstood. Many people mistake procedural decisions for final outcomes. That confusion spreads quickly, especially when the case involves a public figure like Donald Trump. The key point to understand is simple. This ruling does not end the case, but it does help shape what happens next and how the legal battle will continue. Now let us look at why legal analysts believe this ruling could change the direction of the case. This is not about predicting an outcome. It is about understanding potential legal impact. Legal analysts suggest that this ruling could narrow the arguments available to both sides. When certain claims are limited, it changes how lawyers can present their case. That alone may force legal teams to adjust their strategy. This ruling could also increase pressure on the defense and the prosecution. With fewer options available, every move becomes more important. Small decisions begin to carry more weight as the case moves forward. Another possible impact involves timing. Procedural rulings like this may speed up some parts of the case. They may also slow other parts depending on what was approved or limited. According to legal analysts, this is why such rulings matter. They do not end cases overnight, but they quietly shape how the legal process unfolds over time. In high-profile cases involving figures like Donald Trump, these shifts often attract intense attention, not because the case is over, but because the path forward may now look very different than it did before. To better understand this ruling, it helps to look at how legal experts usually interpret decisions like this. Former prosecutors and court analysts often focus on the language a judge uses. They look closely at what arguments the judge allows and what arguments are restricted. Legal experts note that rulings of this kind often signal how a judge is interpreting key legal questions. Even without a final decision, these signals can matter a great deal. They help lawyers understand what the court finds persuasive and what it does not. In other major cases, similar procedural rulings have played an important role. They have shaped how evidence is presented. They have influenced which arguments survive deeper into the legal process. Analysts often point out that these moments are rarely dramatic on their own, but over time, they can quietly reshape the entire case. That is why legal professionals pay close attention to rulings like this. In high-profile cases involving figures such as Donald Trump, these interpretations become especially important. They help explain why certain headlines appear and why legal strategies begin to shift behind the scenes. After a ruling like this, attention quickly turns to how the legal team may respond. In cases involving major legal decisions, Trump's legal team has followed a familiar pattern in the past. One possible response is an appeal. Legal teams often challenge procedural rulings if they believe limits were applied unfairly. An appeal does not end a case, but it can slow the process and shift legal focus. Another response can be a public statement. These statements are often used to frame the ruling for supporters and the wider public. They may emphasize confidence or signal disagreement with the court direction. Strategic delays are also common in complex legal battles. These can involve additional filings or requests that extend timelines. Such moves are part of standard legal strategy in high-stakes cases. It is important to be clear at this stage. As of now, there has been no final statement confirming next steps. Any response will depend on how the legal team evaluates the ruling internally. In cases involving figures like Donald Trump, this period of uncertainty often attracts intense attention. But balance matters. Until official actions are taken, the focus remains on legal process rather than speculation. After a ruling like this, media coverage often begins to shift. News outlets adjust their focus based on how the case appears to be moving. Some reports highlight legal significance, while others focus on possible implications. Public reaction also begins to take shape during this stage. Supporters and critics respond in different ways based on their own perspectives. These reactions are part of broader public discourse rather than a single unified response. Media narratives play a major role in shaping how the ruling is understood. Headlines may emphasize conflict or consequence depending on the outlet. That is why similar rulings can feel very different depending on where people get their news. High-profile legal cases tend to dominate headlines for a simple reason. They combine law, politics, and public interest in a single story. When a case involves a well-known figure like Donald Trump, every development attracts attention, even when the ruling is procedural. At this stage, it is important to separate reaction from resolution. Public discussion and media coverage may intensify, but the legal process itself continues step by step inside the courtroom. At this point, many viewers ask a simple question: what happens next? In most major legal cases, the next step often involves appeals. An appeal allows a legal team to challenge a ruling before a higher court. This process takes time and does not produce immediate outcomes. Additional hearings are also common. Judges may schedule further sessions to address remaining legal questions. Each hearing adds another layer to the process and extends the timeline. This is why major legal cases move slowly. Courts are required to follow detailed procedures. Every step must be reviewed carefully to ensure fairness and accuracy. Despite dramatic headlines, legal cases rarely end overnight. Progress happens through a series of rulings, motions, and hearings. Understanding this timeline helps explain why patience matters in cases like this. For cases involving public figures such as Donald Trump, the process may feel even slower. But that pace is a normal part of how the legal system works. If you value clear and fact-based legal analysis without unnecessary noise, this channel is here to help. Our goal is to explain complex legal developments in a simple and responsible way, without exaggeration and without misinformation. If this kind of coverage is useful to you, consider subscribing to the channel. That way you can stay informed as major legal stories continue to develop over time. Thank you for watching and for taking the time to understand the facts.